All right, let's jump right in. Today we're tackling something a lot of you have been asking about: how to boost your communication skills.
And not just theory.
Exactly. We're talking real, actionable strategies you can use both at work and in your everyday life. So we're going deep into this WikiCow guide.
Effective ways to improve your communication skills.
You know, it sounds basic, but it's packed with some seriously useful stuff.
It really is.
Okay, picture this. You're in a meeting, you've got these amazing ideas.
But you just can't seem to get them across?
Ugh, the worst. People are looking at you with blank stares. The conversation goes off on a tangent. It's beyond frustrating.
It is. And this guide actually starts with a really simple solution for that.
Okay, lay it on me.
Organization.
Organization, huh?
Yeah, before you go into any meeting or conversation where you need to present ideas, take a minute to focus on your top 3 points.
Like a mental outline, kind of.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that. But then what? How do you remember those 3 points once things get rolling?
This might sound a little too simple, but honestly, it's a game changer. Write them down.
Wait, seriously, just jot down notes.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be fancy, even just quick bullet points on your phone.
I always thought that seemed unprofessional, like you weren't prepared.
I get that, but think about it. It's not like you're reading from a script. It's just a quick reference to keep you on track. So you stay focused, feel confident, and if you get flustered.
Oh, I see. Like a mental reset button.
Exactly.
Okay, notes it is. So we've got our main points organized. What's next?
Well, this guide talks about something called the audience-centric approach.
Audience-centric.
Which means you basically tailor your message to whoever you're speaking to. Not just like their general background, but their actual knowledge on the topic.
That's interesting. So it's about finding that sweet spot where the information is actually, relevant and understandable to them.
Exactly. They use this example of teaching a college biology class.
Okay.
You wouldn't start by explaining what a cell is, right?
Yeah, no, I get that.
The assumption is that your students are already coming in with a certain level of understanding.
Right. But honestly, in real-life situations, sometimes it's tough to gauge that baseline. Like, say you're explaining a project to your team.
Right?
How do you know if everyone's up to speed on all the background info?
That's a good point. I think that's where a little bit of pre-communication can be helpful.
Pre-communication, like before the actual meeting.
Yeah. Maybe you send a quick email beforehand summarizing the key points, or take a couple minutes at the start of the meeting to get everyone on the same page.
I love that. It's like laying the groundwork for a smooth conversation.
Right.
So we've talked about organization, being aware of our audience. What else can we do to set ourselves up for communication success?
Well, this guide spends a lot of time on something I think we all struggle with.
Uh-oh, what's that?
Minimizing distractions.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right.
Between emails and Slack and my phone constantly buzzing.
It's so hard to stay focused.
It really is.
And it's not just about our own distractions either.
You're right. What about the other person?
Exactly. Think about the message it sends when you're checking your phone while someone's trying to talk to you.
Yeah, not good. It makes them feel unimportant.
Exactly.
So basically, put the phone away, close the laptop, give them your full attention.
It's such a basic thing.
It is.
But it's a sign of respect.
So true. It shows you value their time.
Absolutely. And speaking of respect, the guide brings up this concept of the 5 C's of communication.
The 5 C's. Now I'm intrigued. What are those?
Okay, so it's clarity, conciseness, consistency, connection, and confidence.
Whoa, that's a lot of C's.
Right. And what struck me was how they all kind of work together. You start with clarity, then you can be more concise.
Ooh, like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
I'm really curious about the connection chart. What does that actually look like in practice?
Sometimes we get so caught up in getting our message perfect
Right.
that we forget about, the human element.
Yeah.
Connection is about building rapport, making the other person feel heard and understood, like you're on the same wavelength.
It's true. You can have the most amazing ideas in the world, but if you can't connect with your audience, your message just falls flat.
Absolutely. And, that leads us to something that's often overlooked, but incredibly important: nonverbal communication.
Okay, nonverbal communication. This is a big one. We all know it matters, but how do we actually use it effectively?
Well, the guide highlights one thing that can make a huge difference:
What's that?
eye contact. They even have a specific tip called the 2-4-second rule.
Wait, there's a rule for eye contact. I need this.
It's about finding that sweet spot between holding someone's gaze long enough to show you're engaged, but not staring them down.
Ah, got it. Too little eye contact seems disinterested. Too much is intense.
Exactly.
But I've heard that eye contact norms are different in other cultures. What happens then?
You're so right. What's fascinating is how different cultures have these little nuances that can completely change the meaning of something as simple as eye contact.
Oh, yeah, like what you think is polite could be offensive to someone else. It's a minefield.
It can be, and that's why doing a little research beforehand can be super helpful.
Just to understand the cultural norms?
Exactly. Even asking someone from that culture about their customs can go a long way.
I'm adding cultural sensitivity to my communication toolkit right now. So we've got eye contact. What other nonverbal cues are important?
Well, active listening for sure.
Active listening. Have you ever been talking to someone and you can just tell they're not really listening?
Oh, all the time.
They're fidgeting, glancing at their phone, their eyes glaze over.
The worst.
It makes you feel like you're talking to a wall.
Exactly. And the guide suggests a really simple technique to be a better active listener.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Reflect back what the other person has said, but in your own words.
So basically just repeat what they said.
Not exactly. It's more about summarizing their main points to check that you understand.
I see. So it shows you're paying attention, but it also helps to clarify things.
Right. And on the flip side, what are some signs that someone isn't actively listening?
Well, like we said, fidgeting's a big one.
Yeah.
Also, constantly interrupting,
Yeah.
changing the subject, or just giving these generic responses.
Right.
Like they're not really following the conversation.
And that's why active listening is so crucial.
It really is. It's the foundation for any good communication because it creates a space where everyone feels heard and respected.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered nonverbal cue, eye contact, active listening. What's next?
Let's talk about tone of voice,
Okay, tone of voice.
because it's amazing how much our tone can actually impact the message we're trying to get across.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This guide actually pointed out that a monotone voice could be super off-putting.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like nails on a chalkboard.
It's true, you could be saying the most interesting things in the world, but
But if it's delivered in this flat, robotic tone,
people are going to tune out.
they will.
And it's not just about avoiding monotony, it's about using your voice to emphasize certain points, to convey emotions.
Okay, so how do you do that?
The guide cites a tip from Yale University
Ooh, Yale.
about varying your pitch and volume
Oh, that's interesting.
to add emphasis.
So it's like adding punctuation to your speech,
Exactly.
making it more dynamic.
Exactly.
But how do you know when to, like, raise your pitch or your volume?
Think about it like this. When you read a text message, how do you know where the emphasis is?
Right, it's the capitalization, the bolding, the emojis.
Exactly. So in spoken communication, we can use our voice to do the same thing.
That makes sense.
By raising your pitch or volume, you're saying, hey, this is important. Pay attention.
So it's like another lady of communication, adding depth and nuance to your words.
Right. And it's especially important when you're expressing emotions.
Oh, especially in relationships.
Exactly. Think about saying, I love you in a flat tone versus saying it with real feeling.
Oh, yeah. The words are the same, but the impact is totally different.
Completely. And that brings us to our next big topic, communication in relationships.
Because let's be real, communicating with our loved ones is a whole different ballgame.
It really is. The dynamics are different. The stakes are higher.
The emotions are more intense.
So much more intense. So how does this WikiHow guide approach communication in relationships?
Yeah, I'm curious.
It starts with something pretty basic.
Okay.
Choosing the right time and place for serious conversations.
Oh, that's so important.
Right.
Like, let's say you need to have a difficult conversation with your partner. Don't do it in a crowded restaurant.
Definitely not. Why is Emma setting so important?
Well, when you're in a public place, you're more likely to hold back, You censor yourself, you worry about what other people are thinking.
Exactly. You can't be fully present in the conversation.
You're distracted.
So, choosing a private, comfortable setting
Makes such a difference.
allows for more open, honest dialogue.
Okay, so we found the perfect time and place. How do we actually have that difficult conversation without it turning into a fight?
Well, this guide offers a really powerful tool, I statements.
Okay, I statements. I've heard of these, but honestly, I've always found them a bit cheesy.
I know, I used to think the same thing. But once I started using them, I was really surprised by how much they helped.
Really?
Yeah, they de-escalate conflict, and they help you communicate your needs more effectively.
Okay, I'm willing to give them another shot. So remind me, how do they work again?
It's all about shifting the focus from blame to your own experience. So instead of saying you're always late, which sounds accusatory, you would say, I feel frustrated when I'm waiting for someone.
Ah, okay, so it takes the sting out of it.
Right. And the guide has this great example. Instead of saying you're sloppy, you could say, I feel overwhelmed when our shared space is messy.
Wow, yeah, that's so much better.
Right. It expresses the same concern, but in a way that's more likely to be heard.
And less likely to start a fight.
Exactly. It invites conversation.
I'm officially a believer in I statements, but even with the best communication tools, sometimes conflict is just unavoidable, right?
Absolutely. And that's where compromise comes in.
Ugh, compromise. That word can be so loaded, especially in relationships. What does this God say about it?
They present compromise not as one person giving in, but as finding solutions that work for both people.
Okay, I like that.
Even if it means letting go of some of your own preferences.
It's not about winning or losing.
Exactly. It's about finding common ground, making sure both people feel heard.
This makes me think about how much communication is really a skill.
It is.
It's something we can work on and improve, not just something we're born knowing how to do.
And that's what's so exciting about it.
It is.
It means we can all get better at it. Whether it's at work, in our relationships, even just communicating with strangers, there's always room to grow.
I love that. Okay, before I move on to the next part of this deep dive, let me ask you, dear listener, take a moment to think about a time when you had a communication mishap, maybe at work or in a relationship. What happened and what did you learn from that experience?
We'll be right back. Welcome back. I bet you came up with some interesting stories from those communication mishaps.
I know I did. It's amazing how much we can learn from those oops moments.
Right. So let's dive back into this WikiHow guide because they actually have a whole section on asking clarifying questions.
Oh, that's a good one. I feel like we forget to do that all the time.
It's true. We're often so busy trying to make our own point that we forget to, actually make sure we're understanding the other person.
It's so true.
And asking those clarifying questions, it shows you're engaged.
Yeah.
Plus, it helps prevent those misunderstandings down the road.
So instead of just nodding along and pretending you get it, you actually take the time to make sure you're both on the same page.
Exactly.
What are some examples of, good clarifying questions?
The guide suggests using open-ended questions.
Open-ended?
Like starting with when, why, where, or how.
Okay.
Because those encourage a more detailed response than just a simple yes or no.
So you're digging deeper, getting more information.
Exactly.
And sometimes a well-placed question can be so much more effective than a whole bunch of statements.
It really can.
Help me understand why you feel that way can be way more powerful than just saying, I think you're wrong.
Absolutely. It shows you're genuinely interested in their perspective.
That you're open to hearing them out.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, ready for a little shift in gears?
Okay.
Because this WikiHow guide has a whole section on online communication.
Ooh, interesting.
Which, let's face it, is how we're communicating most of the time these days.
That's so true.
Emails, texts, social media.
The digital age.
There's so much room for misinterpretation when you're not actually face-to-face.
It's really a whole new set of challenges.
It is. So what does this guide say about navigating the online world?
Well, one thing they emphasize is the importance of clarity and follow-through.
Okay, clarity and follow-through.
Let's say you're in a virtual meeting. You discuss a bunch of action items. Afterward, it's helpful to send a follow-up email.
Oh, just summarizing the key points.
Exactly, just so everyone has a clear record of what was decided.
It's like a written agreement.
Right, and it can really help avoid those situations where someone's like, wait, I thought we agreed to do it this way.
Oh, I've been there.
We all have. And speaking of avoiding confusion, the guide has this little tip that I thought was so helpful, even though it seems obvious.
What's that?
Respond to emails promptly.
Oh, yes.
It's a simple gesture, but it can go such a long way.
Shows you're engaged, you value their time.
Exactly.
Even if you don't have a full answer yet, at least acknowledge that you received the email.
Right. Even a quick, got it, I'm looking into this and we'll get back to you soon, is so much better than just radio silence.
Anything's better than radio silence.
It's true. It just keeps those lines of communication open.
Okay, so we've covered nonverbal cues, active listening, online communication. Whew.
That's a lot.
I'm sensing a shift in energy now as we move into this last section of the WikiHow guide.
Yeah.
It feels like they're trying to tie everything together and give us a big picture view of what effective communication really is.
I think you're right. It's where they go beyond just the techniques.
Yeah.
And they start talking about the different types of communication.
Okay, interesting. So what kind of categories am I talking about here?
Well, they break it down into verbal communication, nonverbal communication, written communication, visual communication.
Whoa, there are so many.
And then, of course, active listening.
Right. It's not just about talking, it's about listening too.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that they're all interwoven. They all influence each other.
It's like a communication tapestry.
I love that.
All these different threads creating a complete picture.
That's a great way to put it. Think about giving a presentation at work.
Okay.
You have the verbal part, which is the words you're saying.
Right.
But then you also have the nonverbal communication.
Your tone of space, your body language, eye contact.
All of that. And then there's the visual element, too.
Like your slides, the way you dress, all that.
Exactly.
And, of course, active listening.
Right. Both from you and your audience.
It's like a communication symphony.
With all these different instruments playing together.
I love it. So what's the takeaway here?
Well, I think the WikiHow guide is ultimately saying that effective communication is about finding that balance. Expressing yourself clearly, but also being receptive to the other person's message.
It's a dance.
It really is.
But let's be real, it's not always easy.
No.
Conversations get heated.
For sure.
Emotions run high. It's hard to stay calm and rational.
It is, and that's where the guide's point about communication being a skill comes in.
Yeah, it's not something we're just born knowing how to do perfectly.
It takes practice, patience, a willingness to make mistakes.
That's such a good point. It means we can all get better at it.
Absolutely.
no matter where we're starting from.
Think about any skill you're good at, like playing a musical instrument or even cooking.
Yeah, you didn't just wake up one day knowing how to do it.
Exactly.
You had to learn the basics, practice consistently.
Right.
And communication is no different. The more we practice those active listening skills, the more we pay attention to our nonverbal cues, the more we experiment, the better we get.
The more confident we become.
Exactly. Okay, so as we move into the final part of this deep dive, think about your own communication patterns.
Yeah, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
What areas do you want to focus on improving?
We're going to be exploring even more insights from this WikiHow guide in the next segment, so get ready to take your communication skills to a whole new level.
Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up our communication deep dive.
Let's do it. This is where things get really interesting, I think.
I agree. We're moving beyond just those specific tips and tricks.
Right, more into the big picture.
Yeah, like the mindset behind truly effective communication. And this WikiHow guide, they actually touch on this by talking about communication as a two-way street.
Ah, yes, the two-way street.
So what does that mean exactly?
Well, it's about shifting from a me-focused approach to a we-focused approach.
Okay, I like that. Me versus we.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that communication isn't just about getting your point across. It's also about truly understanding the other person's perspective.
So it's about turning a monologue into a dialogue.
Exactly.
But how do you actually make that shift happen? You know, it sounds good in theory, but when you're in the heat of the moment.
Right. It's tough.
How do you actually do it?
It starts with active listening, which we talked about earlier, but it goes beyond just, nodding your head and saying, uh-huh.
Okay, yeah. So what does real active listening look like?
It's about listening with empathy, trying to see the world through the other person's eyes.
Even if you don't agree with them.
Even if you don't.
What if their perspective is just wrong?
That happens.
What if they're totally misinformed? Like, do you just bite your tongue and nod along?
It's not about suppressing your own thoughts or opinions. It's more about acknowledging their feelings, validating their experience, even if you don't necessarily agree with their conclusions.
So you're not saying you're right, but you are saying, I hear you.
Exactly. And that's where those nonverbal cues come into play again.
Okay, so how do you show that you're listening and respecting their perspective even when you disagree?
Even if you don't agree with what you're saying, you can still convey respect and empathy through your body language and your tone of voice.
So you're creating a space for dialogue.
Exactly. Where it's safe to disagree.
That's so important. Okay, so this brings us to something that this guide emphasizes, and it's so crucial, being mindful of our tone.
Yes, especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics or conflict.
I think we've all been guilty of letting our tone get a little
Snarky.
sarcastic, yeah, when we're stressed or frustrated.
It happens. Emotions run high.
But a harsh tone can just make things worse, right?
It can escalate the situation so quickly.
Whereas a calm, respectful tone can actually help de-escalate things.
Exactly. It's like you're setting the mood for the conversation.
Ooh, I like that. Like choosing the soundtrack.
Right. A calm, steady tone creates a more peaceful atmosphere, while a sharp, jarring tone creates tension and conflict.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, this all makes me think about emotional intelligence.
Ah, yes. Emotional intelligence.
It's such a buzzword these days, but how does it actually relate to communication?
Well, emotional intelligence is all about being aware of your own emotions and managing them effectively,
Okay.
but also recognizing and understanding the emotions of others.
Ah, so you're not just aware of your own feelings, you're tuned into theirs as well.
Exactly. And you can use that awareness to navigate conversations, with empathy, sensitivity, and tact.
So it's like taking all those communication techniques we've talked about and adding this extra layer of emotional awareness.
Exactly. It's about bringing your whole self to the interaction, your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, but also being really receptive to the other person's emotional landscape as well.
It sounds like emotional intelligence is the key to creating genuine connection.
It really is. And what's exciting is that it's a skill that can be developed. The more you practice, the better you get at it.
So just like with communication, we can get better at emotional intelligence too.
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Communication is a journey. It's not a destination. We're all constantly learning, growing, and evolving in how we connect with others. So keep practicing, keep experimenting, keep those lines of communication open.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And remember, even the best communicators out there, they still have those moments where things go wrong. We all do. The important thing is to learn from those experiences and just keep striving to connect authentically with empathy and a genuine desire to understand and be understood. Thanks for joining us on this communication adventure. Until next time, A62.